For those who didn't hear before or take it in, Sergeant Wells and Detective Russell have got to be somewhere at 8:30. And we thank you for coming out, particularly in this week of National Child Protection Week that this was organised in. And so thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you very much. Ladies, you can sit wherever you like, but there are better seats over here on this side in the event that you want to come across. Now's a good time. You don't have to sit right next to the door. I'd like now to, before introducing our next speaker, I'd just like to repeat again what was said earlier for those who came a little bit late, that we are not discussing any matters that are before the courts at the moment. We're not mentioning names, there's no vilification, there's no pursuit of any organisation or group, and we're focusing on the here and now and the future. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Joe Tucci, who is the CEO of the Australian Childhood Foundation. There's a Megillah here written about him, but he said only to put in a... Megillah means a long... Yeah. Okay. You know that word? You know that word? Sure. Megillah. So, Joe's a registered psychologist and social worker with significant experience in child protection and working therapeutically with children. He's worked in the field of child abuse intervention for the past 18 years. And along the way has got a range of awards and degrees, and culminating in a doctorate in emotional child abuse, which he received at Monash University half a dozen years ago. He has served on a number of government advisory bodies, including the Australian Council for Children and Parenting, an advisory body to the Commonwealth Government. He's currently a member of the National Common Approach to Assessment, Referral and Support. Everything's got Rashi Tevot. It's called CARS, the CARS Task Force. So we don't want to hear anything about vehicles tonight. Let's stick to the subject. Joe, if you could stand over there, sure. People will see you best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for the chance to come and talk to you tonight. I'm pleased that you were able to shorten that Megillah. Is that the word? Yeah. You need to tell me what the word for shortening is. Make it easier. The scissor. Okay. There you go. I guess I wanted to talk a little bit about the context of child abuse in Australia and maybe in Victoria, and answer some of the questions that Danny had put up.
Sorry, Jeff, there's a microphone behind you.
This one?
No,
this one.
It might help a bit.
Can I
give him the rein?
Turn it on?
Little switch there.
Push a little button at the bottom.
Danny, what you going to show me?
Looks like it should be on.
There we go.
Sounds good.
It's on?
Yeah.
So, okay, how's that? Is that better? Alright. I wanted to answer some of the questions that Danny has put out there. Two in particular. One is, why should any community be concerned about allegations of abuse that happened 20, 30 years ago? That's the first one. And the second one is, what as a community can people, individuals, organisations do to better protect children who are engaging in activities and doing things that they love to do? How can we become more protective of the community? So they're the two questions that I've been asked to talk about. So I'll take them a little bit in turn. The first thing is the context of child abuse. I mean, Danny said that there is some problems with numbers, and just like anything, there are some problems around definitions of child abuse, but overall, he's right. Somewhere 2 years ago, there were about 350,000 reports of child abuse. Last year, there were about 290,000. Does that mean that all of a sudden 60,000 kids were better protected from last year than the year before? Well, the answer is probably not. It just means that we're counting it differently. But overall, that gives you a sense of the scale of the problem. The issue is that probably every 2 minutes or so there's a report of child abuse being made through to a statutory authority around the country. When we've done our research and we've asked general members of the community, where would they rank child abuse in a list of concerns? Child abuse rates somewhere below problems with roads and footpaths. It rates somewhere below public transport, problems with council rates. If you remind people, if you say to them, well, what about child abuse? You left it off the list. It goes from 14th or 15th to 1st. And that, in a metaphor kind of way, is actually what we do all the time. What we do is to believe that adults out there hurting children is something that's very confronting for us to do. And I think probably one of our reactions is to try to deny it, ignore it. We have this kind of repetitive cycle, if you can see it in the media, that from time to time child abuse fades, it stops appearing in the papers, in the media, and then something will happen and out it comes again. And when it comes out, it's generally associated with a lot of outrage, with a lot of anger, with a lot of distress by people who are innocent bystanders to the experience, people who think about the plight of children, but also people who have experienced it in their life, and there's a lot of those. So that's the kind of community context that we are living in. We're living in a cycle of forgetting, and then a cycle of remembering. And that leads to, for me, the answer to the first question: why should we be concerned about matters that occurred 20 and 30 years ago? Why is it important to pursue those matters and hold adults accountable for what they did 30 years ago? Well, I think that it's quite clear that the way that we acknowledge our past influences how we honour the present. When you look at being able to understand the experiences of people who've carried with them in silence the experiences, the hurt, the shame of abuse for 20 or 30 years, what you find is a life that's full of contradictions, it's a life that's full of distress and difficulties, and at the very least it's a life full of disconnection. Abuse to the people who have suffered it generally is around being disconnected from yourself. You stop believing in the reality that once was. You're told, for example, by the perpetrator of the abuse that you need to see it the way that they see it. It wasn't, you didn't say no the first time that I sexually abused you, therefore that meant you said yes. If you tell somebody, they're not going to believe you. Perpetrators of sexual abuse in particular are expert manipulators of the truth, and they're expert manipulators of history. What they do is they shape the context, the reality of a child's life and those around them to make everyone believe that they're trustworthy, for example, that they can